Hey yo everyone! The Switch 2 has been out for a hot minute now, so I think it's time to do a recap of the console's first 6 months. When it comes to launch windows, there isn't really an official set amount of time, so in this case, I'm going to treat these first 6 months as the Switch 2's launch. I'm going to briefly go over the hardware/software upgrades, mention some of the new games, and of course, talk about the future of the console. As always, if you enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, let's get it. Alrighty, let's start with the Switch 2 itself. Before we begin though, I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm not really going to go too in-depth on the technical stuff because 1, I don't really understand it as much as I probably should, and 2, there are a ton of channels and videos out there that can provide much better analysis than I can, so I would definitely recommend checking out those types of videos if you want to learn about all the DLSS and wattage and whatnot. Instead, this review is coming from a relatively normal person. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, but I do play a ton of video games, especially on the Switch and Switch 2. So, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's talk about this bad boy. For the most part, the Switch 2 is a significant upgrade over the original. It feels like a real generational jump. Obviously, the PS5 and Xbox Series X are more powerful, but their last gen was already pretty powerful, whereas the original Switch was comparably weak. So this modern tech feels like a huge improvement. The console is bigger, which of course makes it a bit heavier than the first Switch, but it still feels good. However, I found that longer play sessions in handheld can cause some uncomfortable cramping. Not sure if that's from the bigger console size or the weight, but I would recommend getting a third-party grip for a more comfortable handheld experience. Anyway, the materials feel premium and bulky, so much so that going back to the Switch 1 feels like picking up a kid's toy. The outer shell is a pretty tough plastic, but I did notice the tiniest of scratches on the back of mine near the kickstand. Not sure how or when that happened, but something to mention, I suppose. All of the main buttons return here, such as the power and volume buttons, and thankfully the headphone jack, but the outer shell also has a brand new C button for party chat, which is serviceable. It also has an additional USB-C port on top of the console, so you can charge in tabletop mode. The kickstand is also a huge upgrade over the first Switches. Instead of just using a little rinky-dink piece of plastic, it's a wider stand made of metal with a nice degree of maneuverability. I'm not sure why they didn't just stick with the OLED stand because I like that one, but the Switch 2 kickstand is still a huge improvement overall. The speakers are also way louder than the first Switch. Seriously, this thing can get obnoxiously loud, which, depending on who's playing what, is either a good or bad thing. The handheld screen is a beautiful 1080p with up to 120 frames per second, something that I definitely was not expecting on a Nintendo console. It is a bit disappointing that there wasn't an OLED option at launch, but the LCD screen is serviceable and the HDR/VRR inclusion does do a lot of heavy lifting. The new dock is a nice improvement as well, with a sleek new look and actual computing parts inside, including a fan to help with cooling, unlike the original dock, which was essentially just an HDMI adapter in a plastic box. When docked, the Switch 2 can get a nice power boost and supports up to 4K resolution. Again, this console is surprisingly powerful. Unfortunately, all of this new power does affect the Switch 2's battery, which, depending on the game you're playing, lasts anywhere between 2 to 6.5 hours. Not the best, but I suppose sacrifices had to be made. And speaking of sacrifices, you're probably gonna have to bite the bullet and purchase a micro SD express card at some point. The Switch 2 comes with 256 gigabytes of internal storage, which unfortunately is just not nearly enough in 2025. Moving on to the controls, the original Joy-Cons were one of the coolest things about the OG Switch, and I am happy to report that they're even better on the Switch 2, besides the fact that they're seriously lacking any fun colors. The buttons feel a tiny bit more clicky-clacky and satisfying to push, and you can remap a ton of controls to fit your liking. Obviously, the Joy-Con 2s are a bit bigger than the older ones, but the larger size makes using them that much more comfortable when splitting them with another player. The SL and SR buttons are larger and stick out a little, so it no longer feels like you're playing with fat fingers. Of course, the Joy-Con 2s also have a built-in IR sensor for freaking mouse controls of all things, something that completely caught me by surprise at the reveal. There haven't been too many games to implement this control scheme yet, but for the ones that have, it seems really cool. It can be a little awkward depending on the game you're playing because the buttons are kind of in a weird spot, but I think these mouse controls still have a lot of potential moving forward. One thing that I was disappointed in with the new Joy-Cons though is that they stuck with the digital triggers. I would have loved for them to have brought in traditional analog triggers to provide better control schemes, like driving around in Cyberpunk 2077. I don't want my only speed options to be go and stop, you know? Anyway, my favorite thing about the new Joy-Cons have gotta be the magnetic connectors though. It is so satisfying to unlock and lock the Joy-Cons back in. The magnets are super strong, but if you really pull hard enough, you can pop them off without the actual release button. The good news for any parents out there is that even if the Joy-Cons were to snap off, they're designed in such a way that protects the internal pieces from breaking. When the Joy-Cons are connected, they're just a little bit loose so that they can easily break away if they need to, rather than being too firm and snapping that magnetic strip inside. Kind of like how skyscrapers sway in the wind. If they were any more rigid, the buildings would snap in half. As for the joysticks themselves, they feel buttery smooth, they're great, but of course, that's not my concern. The original Joy-Cons were infamous for their drift stick, which would essentially make them unusable if they suffered from it. It got so bad that Nintendo had multiple class action lawsuits filed against them, so they eventually ponied up and offered a free repair program. So obviously, the burning question for the Joy-Con 2s was if it would also have Joy-Con drift. Unfortunately, at the moment, I don't have an answer for this. Nintendo has said that they've implemented new tech to reduce the likelihood of drift, but didn't utilize the Hall effect, which uses magnets to decrease wear and tear on joysticks. I'm not sure if that's because they're already using magnets as the connecting mechanism and that might have affected the Joy-Con/Switch 2, or if Nintendo just wanted to do their own thing, which we all know they have no problem doing. I haven't really seen any reports of Joy-Con drift, so I guess so far so good. Lastly, let's talk about the price. It's $450 for the console, or you can get a bundle with Mario Kart World for $500. The original Switch dropped with a price tag of $300, but to be fair, that was a completely different world back then. Since 2017, we've seen a brand new generation of Xboxes and PlayStations come out and increase in price over time due to supply chain issues, chip shortages, tariffs, and a bunch of other nonsense. So with that context in mind, I think the $450 price tag is relatively reasonable. And I am very appreciative that Nintendo has been able to keep stock up with demand. What isn't reasonable, however, is that disgusting $80 atrocity that is Mario Kart World. Which brings me to the games. Look, Mario Kart World is it's fine, but it's not even close to being worth $80. Maybe one day it will be, but for now, I would definitely recommend purchasing the bundle if you have any interest in playing the new Mario Kart. The Switch 2 got off to a bit of a slow start, and I've talked about why that is in another video, but as we approach the end of 2025, the console is finally beginning to pick up speed. The original Switch had some bangers in its first 6 months, including Breath of the Wild and Splatoon 2, but it had nothing like what the Switch 2 has. This time around, third-party developers are clamoring to port their games to the console, even games that are current gen. I mean, come on. How impressive is it that we got Assassin's Creed Shadows, a current gen exclusive, to run this smoothly on the Switch 2? That's incredible, man. Besides the other heavy hitters like Cyberpunk 2077 and Star Wars Outlaws, the Switch 2 is finally starting to get some first-party exclusives rolling in. Donkey Kong Bonanza is a certified Game of the Year contender, Kirby Air Riders is fantastic, and Metroid Prime 4 looks to truly push the console to its limits. With that being said, there is one glaring issue that I would be remiss to not acknowledge: the game key cards. Thankfully, Nintendo decided to stick with cartridges for physical games, so all of your original Switch games are backwards compatible with the Switch 2, and some of them even have free performance boost upgrades available. However, cartridges only have a limited amount of space on them and are relatively expensive to manufacture. This has led smaller developers to skip the physical release and large developers to either pay for larger cartridges or go eShop only. It's a tough spot to be in, so Nintendo, trying to appeal to the physical games crowd, has introduced game key cards, which are essentially just an empty cartridge that allows you to download the game onto your console. I'm not really sure if this will catch on, but I, for one, cannot see myself ever really buying one of these. If you're big into collecting physical games, I would really like to hear your opinion on this. They're basically the exact same thing as a regular physical cartridge, they just don't have any game data on them. So, for example, you buy the game key card, you stick it in your Switch 2, it says you can download the game, you download it, and then you play it. This does not mean you can treat this game as you would a regular digital download though. In order to play the game, you have to have the cartridge loaded into your system, just like you would with a normal game. And just like a normal cartridge, you can sell the game keycard or lend it to a friend, and they can download the game as well, differentiating it from a traditional download code, which is a one-time use only. There are infinite downloads on the card, but just like any other physical game, you can only play it if you have the cartridge inserted into your console. Now, game keycards aren't for every game, only a select few, at least at the moment. I'm very interested to see if this becomes a popular option for publishers or not with their larger titles. Which brings me to our conclusion. What's in store for the future of the Switch 2? Obviously, Nintendo likes to keep things close to their chest, so it's hard to predict exactly what they're working on behind the scenes. We are way past due for a new 3D Mario, and I imagine a new Animal Crossing and Zelda game are also in development. Based on the first-party games we've already gotten from Nintendo though, I am very excited about the future releases. Nintendo doesn't really focus on photorealism, so I think their first-party games can really benefit from the Switch 2's upgraded horsepower. What their games might lack in realism can be more than made up with bigger stories, detailed graphic fidelity, immersive worlds, or just crazy innovation that just wouldn't have been possible on older hardware. I mean, they got Tears of the Kingdom to somehow run on the original Switch. Just think about what they can do moving forward. At the moment though, I think what I'm currently most interested in is the potential for third-party ports. We've already had some bangers, and there are some sweet ports on the horizon, like Fallout 4, but I really want to see what else this console can handle. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen a GTA 5 port yet, or at least an announcement. But really, any of the great games over the past years that Nintendo has missed out on simply because the hardware couldn't keep up will now hopefully be making their way over sooner rather than later to the Switch 2. Plus, with the Switch 2 officially becoming the fastest selling console in history, I'm sure developers have more incentive than ever to get their game on the platform. But for now, I think you guys have heard enough of my yapping. I want to know what you guys think. What are your thoughts on the first 6 months of the Switch 2? Have you picked one up yet? Any favorite features? Any changes you wish Nintendo would have made? God, I cannot believe we don't have custom themes yet. What a disappointment. But what are you guys most looking forward to in the future? I think Nintendo did a really good job of setting up the Switch 2 for success. The rest is up to the developers and publishers to really make the most of it. It's not a high-end PC or a PlayStation 5 Pro by any means, but I think it's an excellent device and worth the price of admission. But again, who cares what I think? I would love to hear all of your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I will catch you in the next one.